Hi friends, good morning. Welcome to Shankaran IA Study Circle. This is Dr. Harinath Reddy, Director of the Institute. Today in this particular video, we will discuss one more important question which is useful for Civil Services Mains Exam, TSPSC Group 1 Mains Exam and even APPSC Group 1 Mains Exam. In fact, this is one of the questions which is taken from APPSC Group 1 Mains previous year's questions. But the question is relevant for any of these three exams. And remember, this question is one of very few good questions because the question is not straight and the question demands your application of mind. So let us see the question. In spite of unitary features, federalism survived in India. Comment. So in spite of unitary features, federalism survived in India. Do you agree with the statement? In case, if you agree with the statement, how do you substantiate? In case if you don't agree with the statement, then again how do you substantiate? So here, before we discuss what shall be written for this question, for the benefit of the students, let me explain what is a unitary constitution and what is a federal constitution. See, unitary constitution. A unitary constitution is one which confers all the powers, executive powers, legislative powers, financial powers in one government, that is the national government. So a unitary constitution is one which confers all the powers in one government, that is the national government. So what does this mean? For example, if you take United Kingdom, it has got a unitary constitution. So in United Kingdom, it is the national government which takes powers from the constitution. But in United Kingdom, there are provincial governments as well as the local governments. But the provincial governments and the local governments, they do not derive the authority from the constitution. They are not created by the constitution. So that is the definition of unitary constitution. On the contrary, a federal constitution is one in which the executive powers, legislative powers and financial powers are divided between the national and the regional governments. In other words, in all the countries which have got federal constitutions, it is not only the national government but even the regional governments will have constitutional recognition. Along with the national government, even the regional governments, they derive their authority and powers from the constitution. For example, United States of America is the first federal constitution in the world. So there are two levels of government in United States of America which derive authority from the American Constitution, that is the federal government and the 50 state governments. So under the American Constitution, the federal government derives authority from the American Constitution and all the 50 state governments, they derive their authority from the Constitution. In other words, in America, the national government and the state governments are created by the American Constitution. So that is the definition of federal. And America is an example for two-tiered federation, which means in America there are two levels of government which derive authority from the Constitution. So at the global level, we have even three-tier federations. For example, if you take Switzerland, under the Constitution of Switzerland, it is not only the national government and the regional government or the provincial government, even the local governments, they derive their authority from the Constitution and they are created by the Constitution. That's why they are called three-tiered federations. A three-tiered federation is one where there are three levels of government created by the Constitution. Even Nepal, which is our neighbor, is also an example for a three-tiered federation. Even India, post 1992, after the 73rd Amendment and after the 74th Amendments to the Indian Constitution in 1992, even India became an example for three-tiered federation. Then the next question is, why did India choose a federal constitution and why not a unitary constitution? So India the reasons why the framers of the Indian Constitution chose a federal constitution and not a unitary constitution is India is of the size of a subcontinent. We have a huge population, we have huge geographical diversity, and then even diversity in terms of language, religion, race, ethnicity, climate. So keeping the diversity of India in mind, the framers of the Indian Constitution felt that a federal constitution is much better suited for India, for protecting the unity and integrity of India, and also for greater participation of the diverse groups in this country in the sharing of political power. So this is the reason why the framers of Indian Constitution chose a federal constitution. In a country like India, if there were to be a unitary constitution with all the powers being concentrated at the national government, that will be a threat to the unity of India. By this time, there would have been a number of demands for secessionism. Already there were demands. Despite being a federal constitution, we do have secessionist movements. If it were to be a unitary constitution, by now India would have become several Indias. So the framers of the Indian Constitution, in their wisdom, chose that the federal constitution is better suited to India. And for that matter, it's not only for India, all those countries which have a huge population, huge geographical size, and which are very diverse, which have got huge diversity, for all such countries, federal constitutions are much better suited. Then again, the student must also keep in mind, we did not borrow a true federation like in America. And again, there are reasons. Why did India deviate from a truly federal constitution like in America? Why didn't India adopt a truly federal constitution in this country? Again, the reasons are very clear. In a true federation, the state governments are more powerful compared to the central government. But the framers of the Indian Constitution, keeping in mind the violence at the time of partition, wherein 10 lakh people got killed in the name of religion because of the violence at the time of partition. So for protecting the unity and integrity of India and to keep the country united, it was felt that we needed a strong central government compared to the state governments. That's why we have deviated from a true federation. So Indian Constitution is no doubt federal, but under Indian Constitution it is not the state governments which are strong like in America, but it is the central government which is strong. So that's why we say Indian Constitution is unitary in character. Indian Constitution is more unitary than federal. The unitary features predominate. For example, single constitution, single citizenship, emergency provisions, institution of governor, etc., etc. They are all examples of a unitary constitution. So keeping this in mind, the framers of the Indian Constitution chose a federation with a strong center to protect the unity and integrity of India, which has got independence on 15th August 1947. If you see the distribution of powers in the 7th schedule, there are 3 lists. With respect to all the 98 items in the union list, center is supreme. And even with respect to the concurrent list, list 3 is called a concurrent list. There are 52 items. So on these subjects in the concurrent list, Parliament can legislate, state legislatures can also legislate. But in the event of conflict between the laws made by Parliament and the laws made by the state legislatures, laws made by the Parliament will prevail over the laws made by the state legislatures. That's why it was criticized that a concurrent list is a de facto union list. De facto union list. Even in the financial sphere, the revenue raising capacity of the central government is far higher compared to the revenue raising capacity of the state governments. Even in the center-state legislative relations, Parliament is given supremacy. Even in the executive sphere, there is supremacy of the center over the states. So keeping all these provisions in mind, it is said that Indian Constitution, though federal in spirit, it is unitary in character. So the question which I have asked in the very beginning is, In spite of unitary features, in spite of dominating unitary features in the Indian Constitution, federalism survived in India. So we are working with a federal constitution for the last 70 years. There were troubles, there were ups and downs in the journey towards a mature federation, but finally we can very conclusively say federalism in India survived. Then what are the reasons for this? So what are the reasons which favored the survival of federalism in the Indian context? The first one, role played by Finance Commission of India. Finance Commission of India. Finance Commission of India, you can bring in Article 280 when you write answers in your exam. Please refer the articles. So I am agreeing with the statement. What is the statement? Despite unitary features, federalism survived in India. So I am in favor of this statement which says that federalism survived in India. And then I am giving my reasons why federalism survived in India. The first reason, Finance Commission of India. This is one important institution which has played a role for the success of Indian federalism. Then what is the role? See, as I told you earlier, when the powers are divided between the center and the states, especially the taxation powers, the central government is given more buoyant taxes. More buoyant taxes. Buoyant means those taxes whose revenue will increase with the increase in the size of the economy. So for example, personal income tax, corporation tax, central excise, customs duty, all these are taxes which are mentioned in the union list and they generate lot of revenue for the union government. When it comes to the state governments, they do have tax revenues but whose buoyancy is very limited. State excise, and even before this, sales tax, state excise, motor vehicle tax. These are three important taxes which are available with the state governments. So the reality in India is the state governments are given more developmental responsibilities but a limited revenue raising capacity. All those developmental subjects which need a lot of money, they are put in the state list. For example, public health, sanitation, agriculture, drinking water, rural development, all these are the subjects in the state list which need a lot of money. But where is the money? The money is with the central government. So if you compare the expenditure and the revenues of a state government, we can conclude saying that the revenue raising capacity of the state governments is limited compared to the developmental responsibilities, which means the state governments are not able to generate revenue fully which is required for the developmental subjects at the state level. But when you see the center, the revenue raising capacity of the central government is better compared to the developmental responsibilities. In other words, there are more financial resources which are available with the center and more responsibilities are put on the states. These are called vertical imbalances. Again, this word is very important, key word which should find a mention in your answer, vertical imbalances. So as I told you, the state governments have got responsibilities of developmental nature, but they do have a limited revenue raising capacity. So to address this problem, the framers of the Indian Constitution, they have provided a mechanism in the form of Finance Commission of India. The vertical imbalances are addressed on the recommendations of the Finance Commission of India. What were the recommendations? What is the job of the Finance Commission? On the recommendations of the Finance Commission of India, the tax revenues of the central government are shared with the state governments. On the recommendations of the Finance Commission of India, the tax revenues of the central government are shared with the states. What does this mean? the revenue generated by the union government through the personal income tax, corporation tax, central excise, customs duty, this is not meant entirely for the union. Part of it has to be given to the state governments. For example, the recent 14th and 15th Finance Commissions have recommended, 14th Finance Commission has recommended 42%, 15th Finance Commission has recommended 41%. So in other words, out of every 100 rupees which the union government gets as a net tax revenue, 42 rupees must be given to the 28 states according to the 14th Finance Commission. 41 rupees must be given to all the 28 states. So in other words, the states are very much dependent on the central government for finances. According to one estimate, out of every 100 rupees which is spent at the state level, 50 rupees it comes from the center. So that is the dependency of the state governments on the center for financial resources. So that's why the Finance Commission of India, it is called the balancing wheel. Again, this word is very important. Balancing wheel. Finance Commission of India is considered as the balancing wheel in the center-state financial relations, in the fiscal federalism. In fiscal federalism or the center-state financial relations, Finance Commission of India acts as the balancing wheel by addressing vertical imbalances. So if you see the role of the successive finance commissions, the share of the states in the central government tax revenues increased from 28% to almost 42 to 41%. If there was no increase in the share of the states in the central government tax revenues, then the financial difficulty of the state governments would have been very big, and it would have definitely created a big strain between the center and the states. But this was avoided to a great extent by the role played by the Finance Commission of India. So this is one reason why federalism in India did survive, the role played by the Finance Commission of India. Then the next one, the second reason, role of the Supreme Court. Role of Supreme Court. See, Indian Constitution provides for imposition of precedent rule in a particular state when there is constitutional breakdown. But this article was misused many a times in the last 70 years of India's independence. Especially in the 1980s, when there was a rampant abuse and misuse of Article 356, Supreme Court has stepped in to correct the problems. So even when there was no constitutional breakdown, even when there were no compelling situations, the union government declared precedent rule under Article 356 and the elected state governments were dismissed. And this was very frequently abused and misused, and this has undermined the federalism in the Indian context. And so the Supreme Court, in one of the very famous cases, S.R. Bommai versus Union of India, S.R. Bommai versus Union of India, 1993. S.R. Bommai versus Union of India, 1993. In this case, a 9-judge bench of the Indian Supreme Court unanimously said, federalism in India is not a matter of administrative convenience. It is a principle. It is a basic feature of the Indian Constitution, and this cannot be taken away even through a Constitutional Amendment Act under Article 368. Please remember, the word federal is nowhere mentioned in the Indian Constitution. Despite this, the Supreme Court held federalism to be a basic feature. And what does that mean? It means the union government must respect the constitutional autonomy of the state governments. Unless there is a compelling reason, the union government must not use Article 356. It must not dismiss an elected state government without a compelling reason. So to a great extent, the misuse of Article 356 has greatly come down because of the judgment of the Supreme Court in S.R. Bommai case. So the role of the Supreme Court is one more reason why the federalism in India did survive even today. Then the third reason, rise of regional political parties. Regional political parties. Regional political parties. See, for almost more than 2 decades, Indian National Congress was dominant at the national level and even at the state level. But in the 1980s and in the 1990s, India witnessed the emergence of strong regional political parties, and for almost more than 2 decades in the 1990s and 1980s, there were coalition governments at the union level. So the union, for forming the governments at the union level, there was a greater dependency on the regional political parties, and because of the dependence on the regional political parties, the voice of the regional political parties got better heard. So this was one more reason why federalism did survive in India. So the era of coalition governments. Coalition governments. Before Narendra Modi became the Prime Minister, that is before 2014, in India we had the culture of coalition governments, UPA, NDA, United Progressive Alliance government and a National Democratic Alliance government. So the national political parties like BJP or the Indian National Congress are not able to form the governments on their own before 2014. So there was dependence on the regional political parties, as the national political parties are dependent on the regional political parties. There were checks and balances on the national government while using any power under Article 356. But for good or bad, since 2014, India has witnessed the single party dominance at the union level. Now BJP was able to form the government in 2014 as well as in 2019 on its own majority. So this may create, that's the reason why for increasing assertion of the national government over the states in the recent past. But earlier we had coalition governments. So the rise of strong regional political parties and the era of coalition governments also was one of the reasons for the survival of the Indian federalism. But now the context has changed. Now India has witnessed the re-emergence of single party governments at the national level. I presume that in the coming future, we will get back to the era of coalition governments, and there will be an increasing dependence on the regional political parties to form the governments. Then the third point, role of Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha. For any constitution to be called as federal, there are several requirements. One of the requirements is the parliament at the national level shall be bicameral. Bicameral means there shall be 2 houses, upper house, lower house. In India, the upper house is called Rajya Sabha or the Council of States. The lower house is called Lok Sabha or House of People. Lok Sabha or House of People. So what is the reason to have an upper house in all the countries with federal constitutions? Why is it mandatory? Why is it compulsory to have bicameral parliaments in a federal constitution? The reason is simple. As there are 2 levels of governments created by the constitution, to protect the interests of the states in the national parliament, there will be one house which gives representation to the states. In the Indian parliament, Rajya Sabha or the Council of States, Rajya Sabha or the Council of States gives representation to the states. So if there is any ordinary bill or a constitutional amendment bill which goes before the Rajya Sabha, and if this bill has any provision which will undermine the authority of the state governments, Rajya Sabha can disapprove that bill. For example, when Rajiv Gandhi government has introduced the 64th and the 65th constitutional amendment bills relating to local governments, which is a subject in the state list, the states felt that their authority was undermined and the center is encroaching into the areas which are given to the state governments. So the 64th and 65th constitutional amendment bills could be passed in Lok Sabha but could not be passed in Rajya Sabha. So that's how the Rajya Sabha can play. So Rajya Sabha acts as a revising chamber. Rajya Sabha protects the interests of the states in the national parliament by giving representation to the states. So if there is any bill, ordinary or constitutional amendment bill, which is against the interests of the states, such bills can be defeated in the Rajya Sabha. So Rajya Sabha to some extent also has played a role for the survival of Indian federalism. The next one, Interstate Council, Article 263. Article 263, Interstate Council. See, Interstate Council was created for the first time in 1989-1990. Article 263 of the Indian Constitution deals with the establishment of Interstate Council, and Interstate Council is a constitutional authority. Then what is the purpose of Interstate Council? Interstate Council acts as the common platform for the center and the states to resolve issues which are of common concern. So since 1990 in India, there was Interstate Council which is trying to play a role to address the issues which are of common concern to the center and the states. So Interstate Council is also one example which has played some role in the success of Indian federalism. And more important, 262. So in India, to resolve interstate river water disputes, Article 262 provides a mechanism. If interstate river water disputes are not amicably resolved, there will be conflicts between the states, among the states, and between the center and the states, and that will destabilize Indian federation. So Article 262 has conferred the power on the Indian Parliament to provide a mechanism for resolving interstate river water disputes. In fact, interstate river waters is a subject in the Union list, entry 56. So interstate river waters, it is a national property, and no single state government has any authority over interstate river waters. So the Constitution of India in the form of Article 262 empowered the Indian Parliament to provide a solution for resolving interstate river water disputes. Accordingly, Indian Parliament has enacted Interstate River Water Disputes Act 1956, under which the tribunals were constituted to resolve interstate river water disputes. And these tribunals will be enforced by the Union government. Sometimes even the Supreme Court will also intervene if the tribunal awards are not enforced. So by providing a credible mechanism for resolving interstate river water disputes in India, in the Indian Constitution in the form of Article 262, the framers of the Indian Constitution were able to ensure that the federalism in India survives. So interstate river water dispute tribunals, interstate river water disputes tribunals which were set up under Article 262 as provided under the Indian Constitution were also responsible for resolving the disputes between the states and among the states with the involvement of the central government. So this could be one more reason which can be given. Then in the recent past, GST Council can be given as an example. GST Council. In the Indian Constitution, Article 279 capital A, Article 279 capital A, it provides for the establishment of GST Council, Goods and Services Tax Council. See, GST is an important reform in the indirect taxation. We have one nation, one tax now in India with respect to indirect taxation. So for the management of center-state financial relations with respect to indirect taxation in the form of GST, we had an amendment, 101 amendment. 101 amendment to the Indian Constitution has provided for the establishment of GST Council. So of late, in the recent past, GST Council is one more institution which is a very beautiful example for cooperative federalism. which is an example for cooperative federalism in the financial sphere. So this is again going to be an important institution to manage the federalism in this country. In addition to this, Niti Aayog. Though Niti Aayog is neither a constitutional authority nor statutory authority, Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India, which has come in the place of Planning Commission, is also one of the institutions which can play an important role in maintaining the federalism in India. When this was created, the Prime Minister of India told that the states will be seen as equal partners in deciding the national developmental agenda. There will be no more big brother attitude from the central government. So the central government as well as the state governments as equal partners in Niti Aayog will decide the national developmental agenda. So Niti Aayog is one more example for cooperative federalism, and this can again play an important role in maintaining the Indian federalism. But how Niti Aayog differs from Planning Commission? In the earlier Planning Commission, the states are not represented. In the Planning Commission, states have no representation. But in the present Niti Aayog, all the state chief ministers are represented, and in deciding the national developmental agenda along with the center, the states will be seen as equal partners. So Niti Aayog will act as a think tank not only for the center but even for the state governments. So there is increasing participation of the state governments, there is increasing voice to the state governments in the Niti Aayog, and this can again play an important role in the future for maintaining Indian federalism. Like this, you can bring a number of examples which have played an important role in maintaining Indian federalism. So this is more than adequate for you, not just a 10-marker answer. You can write an essay with this information. So that's it about the answer for this question. In spite of unitary features, federalism survived in India, comment. So I agreed with the statement and I have given the reasons how the federalism survived in India. Thank you.